Okay, welcome to PRS in Conversation, a series dedicated to looking inside, looking outside in conversation. Today in Los Angeles, tonight in Izmir, Turkey, we're joined by Matthew Taylor, who is the director of the school at PRS, at the Philosophical Research Society. It's great to have you make some time for us, Matt. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, great to see you, James.
So it's pretty amazing that I am in Izmir, which is one of the seven cities of Revelations in the Bible, ancient
Yeah,
Smyrna, and you are in the Babylon, LA Babylon.
yeah, absolutely, and both connected through PRS and through the people we've met there and the
Yeah,
things we've read.
and
Amazing.
we're almost as far apart as you can get. We're 10 hours difference, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
exciting. I hope
great.
everyone is doing well at PRS, and we're looking forward to having an update. I
Yeah,
wanted to talk, of course, about the school aspect, but I wanted to
sure.
start a little with the place, the PRS place, because it always amazes me is that it almost has an origin story with it's archetypal in some way with everyone who encounters it. Like for me, I
Right,
can remember very specifically. It was about 23 years ago, and I was driving down the 101, and of course, there's traffic. I'm trying to get home to Silver Lake, so I get off and get onto Franklin, and then there's another accident, so I get up onto Los Feliz, and I'm driving, and on the right, I see the sign,
right.
Philosophical Research Society, and
Yeah,
uh, and I just turned right away on that road that's you're on the corner of. I mean, I think I squealed the tires, pulled in. I was like, "What is
right,
this place?" And I walked into the bookstore, and I just immediately felt at home. It was
right,
really strange, and I ended up buying some beautiful artwork and the postcards, gift cards for my girlfriend. So I go home, I meet her there, and we were both fans of, and still are, of The Alchemist at that time. And, in
right,
that book, they're always talking about the universe is sending you the signs, as like Jungian synchronicity, so to speak.
right,
And so I go into my house in Silver Lake, and when she joins me, I say, I saw the sign. She said, "What was it?" And I said, "It was a sign. Like literally, it was a sign. Philosophical
right,
Research Society." So I end up going 2, 3 times a week for years, and it of course changed my life. But every time I've come back, what strikes me is even last February was the most recent time I was there. That whenever I
yeah,
return, I still feel that same sense of coming home, that sense of timelessness. But there's also such a churning of lectures and events and conversations and exposure to ideas, artwork, events, that it's this amazing dialogue between the timeless and this really in the world churning out of ideas that are meant to be anything is explored, anything is
right.
shared. So I'm just curious about your origin story because the more I talk with people from PRS, they all seem to have a same kind of wandering home
Right.
feeling.
Well, yeah, and I originally worked in the bookstore, and I'll get to my origin story, but I love that idea of archetypes because the people who wander in when we're not having events, the people who just happen to end up in the bookstore on any given day, there are there are almost shared origin stories between them. For many people, it's either that their tires squealed when they saw the sign and they
Yeah,
came
yeah,
in.
yeah,
The other two common themes are I've driven by this place for years. It was
yeah.
always just this
Hmm.
enigma to me that kind of like it was the one place in my neighborhood that I had no idea what it was. And today I'm finally wandering in, and
Yeah,
usually those people return for events, or they're the people for whom it's a kind of pilgrimage. The people who have read Manly Hall their whole lives and they live elsewhere, and um, and for them it really is. It's a homecoming that's been planned. I think that feeling of coming home happens unexpectedly for a lot of us, but for some people, it's this place that in whatever small town they're in or something like that, there's no comparable institution, and this is this amazing place that they've thought about for years, and those are always great people to meet when you're working
yeah.
there.
The pilgrimage is really interesting because I think not too long ago you had some Roerich scholars on campus from St. Petersburg, Russia, exploring the
Right.
connection between Manly Hall and Nicholas Roerich. And,
Right.
and when you think of the space, there's the statue out front that's "Thou art that
Yeah.
amazing quote that Campbell would always um, share with people. And you just feel like, yes, thou art that. I understand.
Right.
But that's just
Right.
the beginning. That's not the end. But I
Right.
think
I mean,
go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, just, I mean, even when you're in the parking lot, which we all know LA parking lots are usually hectic and
Right.
terrifying, but even when you're there and as soon as you're on the campus itself, it's this kind of serene and reflective and calm space, literally in the middle of Los Feliz, which is a pretty
Right.
bustling neighborhood. But yeah, it does. Um, it's very conducive to the purpose it serves, which is reflection and discussion. The space itself really facilitates that in a really cool way.
Yeah, and it seems to have been built over time. With
Right,
every addition, whether it's with the garden or whether it's with the, I know you've made some big changes to the auditorium, and it seems
right.
to be like it's a physical reflection of all of the spiritual or intellectual uh, seeking and exploration that's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so my origin story, Greg Salyer, the president of PRS, he was actually a professor and kind of a mentor for me when I was in college. And we stayed in touch
Mm-hmm.
over the years, but I lived in New York. I traveled for a while. And I eventually landed in Los Angeles about 3.5 years ago. And so he and I had gone out for coffee just to catch up again. And one day he invited me to a lecture he was giving at PRS. He had recently come on as the academic dean for the online university at the
Mm-hmm.
time, and so he invited me to a lecture on Zoroastrianism,
Wow.
um, and so I came to that, and yeah, it was incredible. I wandered through the bookstore beforehand. I sat and listened to Greg speak, and I'd heard him speak so many times, but hearing him in that auditorium, where you feel everything's elevated because the history is almost palpable. It's
Mm-hmm.
such a great
Mm-hmm.
space.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't know of the history, I came in blind to this place. Uh, and afterwards, there was just this great discussion. And I remember, really enjoying the contributions and even kind of talking afterwards with people who still continue to come every Tuesday night, who I help check into the events now. There's
Wow.
this great, in addition to the people who wander in, there is this great kind of core community that's always there. And I first encountered it that night. Now, skip ahead a few months, and Greg knew that I was just kind of new to LA, just kind of scraping by and eking out an
Mm-hmm.
existence as a freelance writer, just kind of
Right.
getting wherever I could. Um, and uh, and things at PRS often happen very quickly, and there's this great sense of speed with the change and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so one day when he came in, it turned out that they needed somebody to work in the bookstore ASAP, and
Wow.
and he loves telling this story, his side of it, because he thought of me and he was like, hey, this could be a thing that supplements his writing. He loves bookstores, let's
Right.
give him a call. And he called me a ton of times, and he had already told Obadiah Harris, the president at the time, oh, I have
Mm-hmm.
somebody, we'll call him, I'm sure this will work out. And all day he was calling me, and I never picked up. And on my side of things, I lived in Koreatown at the time with a girlfriend, and there are all these great spas there. So on my end of things, we're spending all day relaxing in this Korean spa in the Himalayan salt room, just as relaxed and chilled out as can be,
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
to saunas. And then I got out and I had 20 missed calls from Greg.
That's right.
Yeah. So he always loves telling that part of the story. But I called him, and he mentioned that they needed somebody for the bookstore, so I agreed to come try it out. I came in the following day, and Greg took me to Obadiah Harris's office, and the president's office there is another just amazing,
Mm-hmm.
beautiful space. And it was not a job interview, but Obadiah had, you could tell he was very perceptive and very wise, and he just
Yes.
talked to me he talked to me about life and literature and things like this, not about career experience, not about, if I knew how to count a drawer at the end of the day.
Right.
Came up, and then I was hired, and so I started out just as somebody who worked in the bookstore. Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Harris used to do some amazing Sunday lectures. He was incredible, man. It was
Yeah.
and and now you find yourself as the director. Can you talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that transition? Because you were
Sure.
working over the years to move into the new responsibility.
Right. So when Greg became the president of the institution, he he asked me to start helping out with some of the academic side of things, so helping out with the online university. So for a while, I was the curriculum and instruction coordinator, and so I was beginning to work with the faculty and the new academic dean on designing classes, getting our curriculum together, all of those kinds of things, which was really fun, and it was kind of an exciting new world for me. I love the classroom, and we were replicating a version of that online with this amazing subject matter
Yeah.
that was like unseen in other online universities,
Yeah.
and so I was in that role for a while, and then I'm sure we'll get to our transition into our current online learning model.
Hmm.
But when that happened, the kernel for that largely, there were a lot of factors that went into the decision, but part of the kernel for it was just a conversation between me and Greg. And so there came a time, and this would happen nowhere else except PRS, where Greg said, let's roll out that idea and you can do it.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
kind of be the person to actualize this thing that we talked about. So yeah, I've been the director of the new online model for just over a year now, and it's been great. It's everything we hoped in that initial conversation, and yeah, we'll get into what makes it so unique, and I think how it complements everything we do on campus, and how it really fulfills the foundational mission of PRS in a really meaningful way.
Yeah. You're really trying to create a global learning inclusive community of seekers, people who want to share different levels of expertise or interest. And I do see that you're trying to replicate that online, and that's really exciting about your approach. I was just thinking about when you mentioned the word faculty. I mean, it must be really exciting to have faculty who are in tarot cards, and then others who are a PhD in psychoanalysis, and others who are cultural critics. I remember when I came last February, it just happened to be, I'd flown all the way from Izmir. It's like an 18-hour flight with
Right.
all of the changes at the airports. And then I drove right to PRS, and I walked into this lecture on love, on active love. And it happened to be Valentine's Day. And
Right.
it's, I can't describe it. I mean, she was an incredible speaker, but
Yeah.
it was something about being in that space and hearing that message that you never know what you're going to encounter.
Right. And
Uh, uh, Go ahead.
all of those juxtapositions are amazing, with like a tarot teacher versus a
Right.
PhD who studies psychoanalysis, and you even get that on the day-to-day level at PRS in this really amazing way, because a lot of my role there is very creative and intellectually engaging and invigorating, but of course there are just normal office work tasks. I have to do certain tinkering with the learning management system, things like that. And I love the juxtaposition of sometimes doing that office work. And
Yes.
my office is still in a little room in the bookstore. So
Nice.
sometimes I'll be doing that, and then somebody wanders in, and they're like a self-described, mystic seeker who just wandered in on off the street. And
Yeah.
I love those juxtapositions that are so unique to PRS.
Yeah.
I mean, I have plenty of friends in office jobs, and their work usually isn't halted for a while for a conversation with somebody who's studied esoteric philosophy for years and wants to talk about symbolism. I love that.
Right. And it's very interesting about it being in LA, because LA seems to have people who maybe they've worked as an editor, but they also happen to have read everything that about symbolism, like you said, and have an expertise in that from just their passion. And I remember in February when I was there and we were doing our talk on wisdom literature or literature as wisdom. And
Yeah.
and you had mentioned this idea that you had this vision, this discussion with Greg about what you wanted to do in the online space, and how he had said, do it. And it was
Right.
really that follow your bliss, as Campbell was fond to say, and you're doing it every day, and it's exciting. So
Right.
let's get into a little about you know how you made that move from the more, I don't want to say it's traditional because I don't think PRS was ever traditional in that sense, but it was traditional in terms of a degree, a program, classes, grades, things like that. But you have gone into a new direction that to me is very exciting.
Right. And that it it made sense to go in that new direction in so many ways because you think about, we talk about practical and profound wisdom as kind of the cornerstone of PRS, and it being available for truth seekers and being accessible for anybody who wants to engage with these questions. And but it's practical in a very particular way, a way that's not immediately quantifiable. And a lot of the requirements to continue being a degree program, those were increasingly asking us to hew to kind of homogenous standards that were kind of taking what was so unique about us and diminishing that a little bit. And also, practical doesn't mean immediately quantifiable. It doesn't mean that it's a skill that obviously takes you the next rung up on the career ladder,
Right.
or there's even another side where we see a lot now where you'll see some new app that says, this CEO read 2 books a day every day.
Right.
If you do this, you'll get rich. Here's how you do it.
Right.
It's very, very much about very clear paths, whereas we see what we're doing is a lot more holistic about the learning and discussions in themselves have a practical effect on your life, on the way you engage with the world, on the way that you interact with the people around you and shape your relationships and all of that. But yeah, so the university model was kind of requiring that we diminish some of that. There were a lot of questions from accreditors and things like that about how will this apply to people's career paths? Did they end up on a particular career that your programs helped them onto? And it was like, consciousness studies just doesn't have a very clear set career path afterwards. It can inform all kinds of things, but so yeah, we decided to move away from the degree model and move into a model where we were accountable only to ourselves and to our community, to the students and the instructors. And what that also did, in effect, was it took down a lot of the barriers to entry. It actually is accessible.
Exactly.
It's accessible in the way that our mission always was supposed to be. And we have that on our Tuesday nights. The diverse range of people who show up on that campus is amazing. There's no barrier to entry there, and anybody can participate in the discussion afterwards.
Yeah.
And now with this new model, we kind of have that online again. You don't have to apply. There's no admissions department. The classes are significantly more affordable, and so yeah, it's made it both so we can tackle the subject matter that we want to. We still have our own standards that are to maintain quality, and they're pretty rigorous standards, but they're standards developed by us for our very specific community of people.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's open to everybody, and we see that in the classes. The range of people, a PhD somewhere, somewhere in India with somebody who never went to college but has read these books in some small town in Montana. I mean, the groups of people who come together in these online classes and engage with each other in the discussion forums is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, well, there's 2 things you said that I think are really, really interesting. It's almost like the way we talk about practical these days is malnourished, or it's definitely diminished. And it sets up this bipolar aspect between the theoretical and the practical. when it actually, reading a book or having a discussion or engaging in an idea and bringing it to the world can be life-changing in practice. And it's that
Right.
notion of somehow practical got divorced from practice. And it's practice, whether it's a yogic practice or a religious practice or an esoteric practice, it's in the world. And it is meant to be life-affirming, and somehow you're bringing those back together. And
Right.
that's really exciting. And the other word I found interesting was when you were talking about inclusion, because there's a lot of focus now on including on the subject level, like make sure we have not just canon writers, but we're seeing writers from all different points of view. But often there is, to be honest, of course, access issues in education about wanting to include more voices, but not to the degree that you're talking about, in the sense that anyone can come in off the street and go to your event or can engage in one of the classes you have, regardless of age, location, expertise level. And it reminds me of seminar days where, whether you're an expert in a certain book that you've read 20 times. I remember when I was teaching Cannery Row, that you remember well in our
Yeah.
class.
Sure.
It didn't matter that I had read it 10 times, 15 times, and I was the quote unquote professor.
Right.
Somebody who was reading it for the first time was always bringing something new to the text. And so
Right.
that inclusion of the voice is, I think, really profound. And when you're talking about the structure of the course, there's a lot these days where we're exposed to everything. We have so much information, but a lot of it, even if it's brilliant, it still puts uh, the still puts you in a passive relationship almost.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can download lectures from some of the world's most brilliant. I was just watching a Zizek video, and
Right.
that's amazing, no matter what he's talking about. But
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
still passive, and so how are you bringing that? And that's, I think, a big move with what you're doing in terms of forming the
Right.
community, an active community of learners and seekers. How is that built into the courses or the programs?
Yeah, yeah, cool. So yeah, I want to quickly address all three of those things. So I think the kind of crude or malnourished, as you put it, version of practicality, it is really interesting in that we often think of that as having to lead to a discrete skill or competency.
Right.
But I think we're thinking of it in a way more holistic sense, where yeah, you can't pinpoint exactly how reading this text and having this discussion with brilliant people, you can't say exactly how what skill that gave you, as if you're leveling up in some video game or something.
Right.
It changes it changes you in this way that is a lot more complex and I think interesting. And I think for the accessibility point you made, it's also just such a rare space, and it's amazing to see this hunger for it. A space that isn't
Yes.
academic,
Yes.
that also isn't about we're getting together to learn woodworking or something, which is amazing, but it's a space that's neither of those. It's a space for an intellectual community, for people with this like insatiable curiosity about all facets of the world. And I mean PRS as a whole, events and online classes.
Yes.
And part of us making this new online model was, I think, correctly identifying both the hunger for and kind of the lack of spaces like that. And I think our online classes, their success has been a testament to that. And then as far as the active learning online, yeah, we're very focused on prioritizing kind of cultivating an online learning community. So the discussion forums are a big part of that. And the whole point is that it's asynchronous in the sense that anybody in any class can go online anytime and engage with the materials and the discussion forums anytime while the course is running. So there's no particular time that they have to be online or anything like that. But on a week-to-week basis, everybody's engaging with the same module, which is to say the same content, the same set of materials. So even though it accommodates your own schedule completely, you know that everybody else in that class, everywhere in the world, is grappling with the same stuff as you. And the discussion forum is an amazing place where that plays out, because somebody could, look at you and me. You could be posting at nighttime right before bed in Izmir about something that you were wrestling with throughout the day while you were studying. I wake up, I read your comment first, and then I watch the video in the class, and your comment has informed my experience of watching that video. It's like,
Right.
there's already that dialogue in that way, and then the dialogue becomes literal when I go and respond to your post in the forum. So having this kind of time frame built in where new things are released each week, and the courses do have a specified date range when they're running, and having the discussion forums, I think has proven to be a success. And we're always looking for new ways. We've tried Zoom calls in some classes occasionally and things like that, but yeah, we really want it to be that active dialogue and active engagement.
Yeah, well, I think one of the interesting things about looking at the courses is it hasn't been that long, so you haven't generated, 100 yet. But even in the ones that have been generated, even in the looking at what's coming, is just the range is such a reflection of what happened as long as I've known PRS, and obviously before, about, or when you look at your calendar, how you can have pendulum art one night, and then a lecture on horror movies and wisdom another night, and then a martial arts that I probably can't pronounce another night. And so beside that also is part of what you're trying to replicate or
Right,
make available globally, is
right.
this true manly hall principle of curiosity and enthusiasm and expansion.
And that's another huge distinction from the academic model, where you get very into a specific niche, and you're focused exclusively on depth at a certain level in academia and just on delving into one subject. Whereas we're really creating something geared towards people who are curious, who are just curious about the
Yes.
world itself, and who want to come and engage with one another on a wealth of subject matter. And yeah, I think that's great. I'm really glad that PRS never has and continues not to be beholden to any specific interpretation or any line on anything. As long as things meet our standards of quality and things like that, we want them there. We want this dialogue to be, to be comprehensive, to be inexhaustible, to feel as big as the world.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And it seems to put the onus on the enthusiasm of the learner to, make meaning of their lives and their experience, rather
Right.
than a certain level of training or expertise to be able to participate.
Right.
And that I've had the privilege of working in, I think, which would you could consider the bridge model, when you were still we were still
Right.
degree granting. But when I came in and the classes I did over 3 years in mythologies, I think we were starting to experiment with how to bring that seminar style, dialogue style, to an online environment.
Right.
And and the encouragement of points of view without this hierarchical structure of someone knows and everyone else learns, and just passes on. I think that's really exciting about what the conversations are. I can remember even when I had 5 or 6 students all over the United States. One was in I think one was in Kuwait, and
Yeah.
the discussions, regardless of quote unquote knowledge level, were incredible, because you never know where a comment or an insight, when people take texts or ideas personally and give them time and thought, love, you could say, you never know what's going to happen with the dialogue and how it then expands.
Yeah, and that's such a profound shift that we did discover, yeah, when you were still teaching in the degree programs, what a meaningful shift it is from quizzes or assessments where you're looking just at comprehension, or you're looking to make sure somebody can identify the answer that's been designated as the correct one, to shift from that to a discussion-based model, or one where when we had assignments, they were about research and developing your own thesis. And just what a shift that is in online learning, to try to bring in what many of us know from our own college experiences or education experiences, the things that are so amazing and profound about seminars, figuring out how to replicate that online. And it's kind of heterodox. It kind of goes against a lot of the conventional wisdom about online classes, which is largely just about assessments, comprehension. You come out with your competency and you're done.
Could almost be heretical, not just heterodox.
Right. Yeah.
And it seems that when we were talking about the malnourishment of practical, or that kind of polarity between practice and theory that's somehow developed, I was just thinking that it's similar when you think about results and non-results. So you have these programs that are result-based. The quizzes, you get your certificate, or you get your grade, or you get your diploma, and you advance. It's result, result, result. And then you have even in undergraduate, as you know, as we know from the program that we both attended, and where I and Greg had the privilege of teaching, that there are other ones that are refusing that model about not being result-based, but being process-based, contributing to your education. But it seems that with PRS, the result is still there, but the result is making meaning and exploring these symbolic systems, or exploring your own learning, your own passion, your enthusiasm, sharing it. And that is a result of an engagement with the world, and a way to make and understand meaning of your lives, your place, however you want to think about it. So I like how it's not just on one side of the polarity between result and process, but rather it's much like with the word practice, it's reinvigorating, or the word result, and what is important in a result, how we think about results.
Right. And I think Greg's emphasis on practical wisdom, which kind of coincided with a lot of these shifts, was a brilliant move, because it's very easy to make this claim that when you're dealing with these big philosophical ideas, or with literature, or things that are presented immediately as kind of abstract or lofty, or or not immediately and obviously applicable to life, it's easy to then kind of stick to that dichotomy of theory, practice, and like this. If you're studying philosophy, it's just about cultivating the interior life of the mind, and there's no actual application. And I love that we've pushed back on that. And I think, again, Greg emphasizing the practical side of it really does, because it comes to life through discussion. And it turns out that like philosophy and literature, when you're talking about them and being informed by them, they're not just a way to interpret or analyze the world. They become how we engage with it, how we might want to reshape certain parts of it. It's as practical as anything, just not immediately and obviously so.
Yeah, and it's that notion of information. Like we live in the information age, but in some way we're starved for interaction in a weird way. And offering that, at least trying to replicate what you can have in a conversation. And in fact, not just replicate, but expand, because the discussion, when you can include people all over the world in thoughtful comments, how they're interacting with text and each other's ideas, is a profound level of engagement and interactivity. And often so much, it gets back to that point I was talking about. Things are seen as information, data to be received, rather than experiences to be created. And when we share ideas about, even if we're just reading something or hearing about something or thinking about something for the first time, and we're engaging with it, that can profoundly affect the way another person may understand, empathize, as they're thinking about a text that may have read many times, may be an expert in.
Right. Yeah. And along with that yearning for conversation, I think a yearning for complexity, for grappling with big ideas. And yeah, I think you're right that there is a way that the discussion forums, of course, it's never going to be a one-to-one. There are things
Right.
in an in-person seminar that you'll just never get,
Yeah.
but that does go both ways. I agree with what you were saying. Like, if I can reflect on something you said for a whole night while revisiting the materials,
Mhm.
and then jump back into the discussion the following day because it's asynchronous, because we can post in the forum every time, that is a really interesting thing. It's a way that allows us to like collectively develop ideas over time, not just in this immediate conversation, but we can develop them over the course of the course and refer back to exactly what was said before. So yeah, I think the forums are cool in that way. And just, I think the instructor's presence in the forums and the way the classes are set up make them so unique. And I love that it worked out, in most ways, because you look at YouTube comments. I mean, who knows what's below us on YouTube when this is up?
Right.
But those aren't what we're talking about. Usually comments on a Zizek video aren't what we're talking about, but there's
Right.
something about the way these classes are designed, the way that people are deliberately coming to the class for this purpose,
Yes.
that makes the forums so rich in a way that you almost never encounter online.
Yes. Yes. Well, I mean, we're kind of running out of time,
Yeah.
but maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the, I don't know, the upcoming courses that you either have. I think you have one that you're registering now for, which looks amazing, but maybe the ones coming in the next few weeks or few months.
Yeah. So yeah, the one that's happening right now, or sorry, that's open for registration right now, and it will begin Friday, June 19th. It's called The Basic Keys to the Secret Teachings of All Ages. And it's taught by Stephen Reedy, who created and taught our Basics of Esoteric Symbolism course, which has been wildly popular. And so it's kind of delving into esoteric philosophy and Manly P. Hall's masterpiece, and kind of
Yes.
teaching people how to read it, because it is a book that doesn't teach you how to read it as much as others do.
Right.
It's hard to just dive into. So that's going to be an amazing one. And we have all kinds of other classes in development. Sacred Music of the Middle Ages is in development right now, and that one's going to be amazing. Everybody has a slightly different approach within our model. So during his lectures, he pauses and tells you which song to play. So during
Wow.
his lecture, you pause, listen to the song. When it's over, or the piece of music, I guess, because it's the Middle Ages.
Right.
And then you restart the lecture, and so that's amazing. The Spiritual Essence of Politics, that's Mark Moritz, who's been a part of the PRS community for a long time, was a UPR student, and this is the first class he's developing, so he's really enthusiastic, and everything he's sent along looks great. But yeah, all of these upcoming classes are listed on prs.org, and there's an online classes button at the top, or you can do /online_classes, and they're all listed there, and they're on our social media. So yeah, we try to promote them heavily, but we have all kinds of great ones in development that'll be rolling out through the summer and the fall, and the old ones that you see. A lot of times I get emails, people are kind of disappointed. Wait, this class already ran, it sounds amazing. So we are pretty firm on not letting people just download the content and pay for it, because of everything we've just been talking about, how important that time frame is.
You can't download the experience.
Right.
Yeah.
But we do try to run those at least once a year, once every 6 months. So people can always email to ask when the next time a course might be running is. Yeah, we're always available for questions, but we have some really great new ones in development.
And you usually provide a good lead time as far as registration, yeah? So maybe like the registration link will open a few weeks before at least, because one of the one of the frustrating things about looking at all those amazing courses is what you just said, where you may have missed something. But hopefully it will be back. Most of them will kind of go into a yearly cycle at least. But just so people interested don't miss, they have a few weeks usually. What's the lead time for them to register?
Yeah, anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks, because we do leave registration open for the first week of the class too, because if you sign up during the first week, you're not behind. So we leave it open for that. And yeah, if they subscribe to our newsletter, which you can do on our homepage, or follow us on Facebook or Instagram, we're very easy to find there. Philosophical Research Society, of course. Yeah, we always announce, like this recent, the basic keys to the secret teachings, we announced 2 weeks before the launch date. So yeah, we try to give people plenty of time, and we always do get that last minute rush when people finally decide, all right, I'm going to do it. And we allow that, we do extend that through the first week of the course. Yeah.
Yeah. And what would you like potential? It's almost not accurate to call them students
Right,
because
yeah.
some of the students may have multiple degrees and just be very interested in the subject. Probably more
Right.
accurate to call them seekers
Yeah.
to get into the mission of PRS. Absolutely learners, but seekers seems to fit better.
Yeah.
What would you want them to know about this the course? Or what do you tell people when you maybe meet them around LA and they what would you like them to know?
Well, I think a lot of what we've been talking about, and what I encourage students to do when they sign up, I always really try to encourage them to participate, that they will get a lot more out of it, not just watching the content and materials. That that's in fact not really the point. I mean, the lectures themselves are amazing. We have brilliant people putting them together, but the reason they're not on YouTube like our other things is because that's not the point. And I try to remind people that the discussion forums are a place to test out ideas. They're not a place to like show your chops or put your essay
Right.
and be like, all right, I know that I will stand by what I said here. This thesis is rock solid. No, that's not what they're
Right.
for. It's to test things out, respond to each other, and kind of develop ideas with other people, through dialogue, through
Right.
argument, through finding the cracks in one another's ideas. And so yeah, the idea is to just dive in there, to not hold back on the forums, not be intimidated. Nobody has ever, I read every forum and every comment just to make sure nobody's ever critical or harsh on each other. No, so just to dive in and try out your ideas and engage with other people's, and you're going to get a lot more out of it. And in fact, the amazing thing is that builds the class. That actually makes the class
That
better.
is the class. Yeah.
Right, a certain amount the instructor builds, and it's a long process, and I admire all the work they put into it. But the class is also the forums. There's a huge difference between the classes where those are super active and the occasional classes where they aren't so active, and that experience comes from the seekers who are in.
Yeah. And it gets back to this notion of practice. So I
Right.
loved what you said about practicing ideas. And it's not necessarily combative. A good seminar doesn't involve um, tearing down other ideas because maybe they're not ready yet, but actually finding opportunities in other ideas. And so when even in the classes I taught, it was sharing and helping people see deeper into their own ideas as they practice, or a comment that you might make really leads someone else to develop their ideas. So it's this dialogic expansion of ideas that can only happen in conversation, in dialogue,
Right.
in discussion. And I think one of the interesting things about, we come from a heavy seminar environment where for 3 hours you're talking about text, but it is really interesting when you have the time with your ideas and then the time to respond to people's ideas. And
Mm-hmm.
the post can be very, very profound. The
Yeah.
effect, which sometimes in a 3 hour seminar, it's hard to do that on the fly, so to speak.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I really like that. I like that you can find the kernel of something that kind of illuminates a whole new aspect of the subject matter for you in somebody else's comment.
Yes.
And then if you articulate how their comment helped you, it in turn helps them develop their own thought process or delve into something something that they almost said as an offhand and wasn't even their main point. It can be amazing to watch it play out.
Yeah, it's incredible to watch in the forum discussions when you keep seeing, I hadn't thought about it, but now that I have, I'm going this way or I'm adding this. It's wonderful when you have thoughtful, engaged, enthusiastic seekers that are doing it out of love. I mean, of
Right.
course, there's a different financial cost for each course, right? Can you talk a little bit about how some are maybe priced one way and others, or what are the prices? Or maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe it's a standard model, but it seems that there's different lengths and some require more materials. And a lot
Right.
of it, of course, goes to PRS. I mean,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I was just gonna say, yeah, the learning for learning's sake and the love for it is an amazing thing about everybody who passes through PRS,
yeah,
physically or online. So for the pricing, yeah, we've experimented with a few different models for that, but we've pretty much settled on about $10 to $15 per week of the course. So
hmm,
like a 4 week course might be 40, seven around 70. Um, and we do often give discount codes to people who have taken classes with us before. So once you've taken one,
hmm,
you can often get discounts on the future ones. But yeah, right around there, which is so cheap compared to what we had to do for the university model, and for really anything else comparable that we've seen. Being able to have 7 weeks of discussion with curated and uniquely created. Instructors are creating their own lectures and curating
right,
materials
right.
that they've found. Having 7 weeks of that plus discussion for $70, we think is great, and that's part of the accessibility also.
Yeah.
And we
The,
just want as many people in there as possible. The forums, the more the merrier. So that's another reason we have the prices so affordable.
yeah. And just before we go, I wanted to ask because it looks like you have a lot of room for growth in terms of course offerings. So if there are people who may be watching this who think that they could offer a course or they have a certain point of view or expertise or passion they want to share, what would be advice to them? And are you open to those kinds of solicitations and ideas? And how would they contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, completely open to people presenting new ideas, and we work together with instructors really closely on helping them understand the model, but also giving them a ton of space to develop things in their own way or give their input. I mean, one thing that's great about our model versus like the TED Talk one is each course is clearly made by somebody different. It's not standardized.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm always happy to hear from new people with ideas and passion about a subject. And what they can do is that they can email me directly at school@prs.org. It's that simple. School@prs.org. And that just starts the conversation. We have a prospective instructor information guide and a proposal form they fill out that we then review. We review the proposal form, and that kind of launches the process. But anybody can propose something, and we'll see what works about it. Some things we might be like, this won't work as a class, but here's part of it that could work if you change it in this way. But yeah, I love having passionate people bring their ideas to us, and often it's the people who aren't in academia but who have a passion for a particular subject who are most readily able to adapt to this new model because they're not used to another one, and they just have this passion of talking about a thing as if they're sitting down next to somebody on a train or whatever, like you say about the very short introduction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's almost the same enthusiasm that I think drives people to sign up for the classes also drives people to form the classes and
Right.
to share. And it's great that you're open to that. And I know from experience that you and Greg and others at PRS are wonderful to work with as far as helping to adapt ideas to, let's call it, this new model or newer model of online engagement.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And speaking of launch, this was the first of the PRS and Conversations. So
Right.
thank you for launching this series. We're excited to do it, and we're looking forward to talking to more of the people who you work with to bring more of an inside view of what happens in that unique and special place known as PRS, and also connecting with some people outside of the physical space who
Right.
also share similar aspects of seeking wisdom, enthusiastic learning that we'll talk about. So it was great. Thank you for giving so much of your time, uh, and I hope you'll come back and be a regular. I think we have a lot to talk about, and
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. It was a great conversation, and I'm really excited about the series. I've gotten a sneak peek of some of the people you have coming up, and
yeah,
it's going
it'll
to
be
be
fun.
awesome.
And as a reminder, if you're watching this and haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Matt, maybe you can say a little bit more about this, but I know there's some wonderful content on there as far as not only lectures from Greg's amazing president class, which he's been doing series after series of really interesting stuff about Los Angeles, in particular, was really amazing. So a lot of that content's available. Lectures, also events. I've watched events, art events, exhibits. So please do subscribe, and you can click the bell for alert when there's a new video posted. Do you want to talk a little bit about what else is on the YouTube channel going way back, which all, of course, is available?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just a wealth of content. Like you said, all of Greg's lectures, other events and lectures are all available on there, and even things that are made uniquely for PRS, kind of like this series. But Courtney Sell, for example, is a great filmmaker who's
Mm.
in a big part of our community, and sometimes he'll make a film that goes up on there. That's made for us, and that's made
Yes.
for people for reflection and calmness and
Yes.
meditation during these times. And Kristen Palombo, who is another part of our community, who does sound baths with those sound bowls.
Yes.
Sometimes,
Those it was amazing. Yeah.
yeah, sometimes
Yeah.
those sounds are the background of the videos Courtney makes. So it's the lectures and events, and you can spend literally days just diving into the backlog of those, and also kind of creative projects that are made specifically by people in our community for PRS. So it's a great channel, and I rewatch certain videos often too. So yeah.
No, I was watching the incredible pendulum art. I
Yeah.
believe that was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I'm very far away in Izmir, but I know even people who are close to PRS at the moment must be feeling what I'm feeling, which is a missing of the place and what can happen inside that space. So,
Right.
uh, do you have any advice about? Will you be sending out an email when events start to go? I know there's restrictions based on the coronavirus situation, but how should people be aware of when things will start to happen on the space? Do you have any sense of that in the space?
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think same as for other updates, being subscribed to our social media and or our
Hmm.
newsletter. Yeah, it's we're just going by city guidelines, so it's hard to know when we'll be able to have
Hmm.
events at any capacity again. But for people who are local, we are doing curbside pickup for the books, so you don't have to pay for shipping. And we're still trying to do, in addition to the online classes, we try to do events online. Some people who do small workshops on campus are trying
Hmm.
to do Zoom, Zoom events and things like that that still kind of create that intimate discussion. So we're trying as best we can to still be there for our community and be like a vibrant and active part of people's lives. And I know I speak for everybody on the staff when I say we're all very eager to be on campus and having events again too. So once, it's hard to know. I really don't have a prediction, but whenever city guidelines allow it and it's safe, we really look forward to having that community physically together again too.
Well, I certainly look forward to being back in that space. And please
Yeah.
give my greetings to everyone there and stay safe. And thanks so much for your time, Matt.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Take care, James.
You too.